In a crowded arena, the crowd cheered, not for heroes, not for victories, but for pain. A man tied to a post, a woman trembling in the spotlight. Every scream, every tear became a show. The king watched, the nobles laughed, and no one ever questioned it, because in those days, entertainment had no limits. Pain was applause, suffering was spectacle, and the arena, it was the stage, where humanity was optional. The arena was alive, not with music, not with celebration, but with anticipation. The crowd shouted, cheered, laughed, every eye fixed on the center where the condemned waited. Chains rattled, sands shifted under heavy boots. A hush fell, then exploded into a roar. They were called performers, but they were not actors, not entertainers. They were victims. A man stood at the post, trembling. A woman knelt nearby, hands tied. The king watched from above, a smile hidden in shadows. The nobles leaned forward, eager for the spectacle. And the crowd, oh, the crowd, they thrived on it. Every scream was applause, every tear a reason to cheer louder. Punishment was no longer private, pain was no longer concealed. It had become entertainment. And the arena itself was perfect. Sunlight poured through stone arches, highlighting faces filled with fear and delight alike. Shadows stretched across the sand, as if the ground itself mourned. A whip cracked, a voice shouted orders, and the crowd's cheer rose higher, drowning out every other sound. Children were there, young nobles watched, and everyone learned the same lesson. In this kingdom, power meant spectacle, and spectacle was survival. No one questioned it. No one protested, because here, in this sunlit pit of stone and blood, humanity had rules, and they were being rewritten. If you want, I can immediately make part 2, next 300 words, with the story continuing inside the arena and the crowd's dark obsession. The crowd leaned forward, eyes wide, hearts pounding. Each movement of the condemned was a signal, a flinch, a gasp, a drop of sweat glistening in the sun. The nobles whispered among themselves, comparing reactions, noting fear, delight, and courage. The king didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence alone kept order, guided the spectacle, sharpened every scream. A man was dragged forward, arms bound, head down. The whip cracked again, slicing the air. The crowd cheered, some laughed, some winced, but all watched. No one looked away, no one dared. A young woman stumbled on the sand, her robes torn slightly. She looked up, meeting the eyes of the king. A shiver ran through her body. The audience gasped in excitement. The nobles clapped, the guards advanced. In the stands, the excitement was intoxicating. The smell of sweat, dust, and iron filled the air. The arena was alive, breathing with anticipation, with cruelty, with ritualized horror. Every punishment was timed, orchestrated, perfected. Each scream, each struggle was part of the show. They were not simply suffering, they were performers in a deadly theater. Yet, beneath the cheering, there was understanding. This was more than entertainment. This was power, a lesson for all who watched. To defy the kingdom was to become the spectacle, and the audience knew it. No one questioned, no one interfered, no one survived without obedience. Because here, in this sun-drenched pit of stone and blood, the line between punishment and performance had vanished. It wasn't just justice, it was theater. and everyone, voluntarily or not, was a witness. As the sun climbed higher, the arena grew hotter. The condemned were no longer just victims, they were symbols. Each punishment was carefully chosen, designed to terrify, to captivate, to teach. A slip could mean death, a misstep could become the crowd's favorite moment. Behind the audience, in hidden boxes and shadowed corners, the organizers whispered. They monitored reactions, timing screams, noting which acts drew the loudest gasps. It was not chaos, it was calculated, pain choreographed into perfection. A man struggled against his chains, defiance flashing in his eyes. The whip cracked, the crowd erupted, even the king smiled, satisfied. Then the woman, once hesitant, was pushed forward. Her fear was visible, raw, almost beautiful in its fragility. The nobles leaned closer, anticipating her every reaction. The crowd roared, hungry for more. Yet some who watched closely saw the pattern. This was no mere punishment. This was control. Every act of suffering, every tear, every scream reinforced the hierarchy of power. The arena itself was a machine, perfected over decades. The sand, the ropes, the sun, the shadows, all elements in a theater of terror. Even the spectators were trapped. They learned obedience through fear, fascination, and complicity. And the condemned, many survived, some did not, but it didn't matter. Their suffering had already served its purpose. Even those spared carried the lesson in their minds. The arena's shadow stretched far beyond the walls. And as the torches dimmed, the palace grew still. The echoes of cheers faded, yet in every heart the memory of the day lingered. Because the arena had not only entertained, it had taught. A lesson that would never be forgotten. The kingdom had learned that fear was the most effective ruler, and that sometimes entertainment was far more powerful than law. Power, spectacle, and obedience, the final act of control, was complete. The theater of terror had won. As the sun began its descent, shadows stretched across the arena, long and ominous. The crowd was exhausted but restless, craving more. They had seen fear, pain, and courage, and they wanted it again. Nobles whispered strategies to ensure their favored victims survived longer or suffered more spectacularly. Servants and guards moved silently, carrying out orders with precise timing. Even the king leaned forward, his expression unreadable, yet satisfaction glinted in his eyes. What had started as punishment had become a lesson for everyone. Every spectator learned the rules of survival without a single word spoken. Obey, watch, and never forget. Some children, brought to the arena as part of their education, sat wide-eyed, absorbing every scream. This was how power was taught. This was how fear was inherited. A young woman stumbled, tears in her eyes, struggling against the ropes that bound her. The crowd erupted in a mix of gasps and cheers. A noble woman in the front row clutched her fan, unable to look away. The king's shadowed gaze never left the scene. And still, the show continued. Every act was precise, rehearsed, and perfected over decades. Punishment had become ritual, ritual had become entertainment, and entertainment had become absolute control. By nightfall, the arena was silent again. The victims were removed, the sand swept clean, and the audience dispersed. But the lesson lingered, etched into every mind that had watched the day. Power was absolute, obedience was mandatory, and the line between life and spectacle had erased entirely. The arena had claimed more than just the bodies of the punished. It had reshaped the kingdom itself.
fear, fascination, and control intertwined to form a society that would never question authority again. The theater of terror had done its work. Night had fallen, and the arena was empty. The sand was swept clean, the blood washed away, the echoes of screams replaced by silence. But the lesson remained. The spectators had seen fear and pain. They had cheered, gasped, and whispered, and they had remembered. The kingdom itself had been reshaped by a single day. Children had learned obedience, nobles had learned caution, servants had learned fear. Even the king, sitting in his shadowed throne, had ensured that every movement, every scream, every